people rush in when there's a difficult story. They tell that difficult story, and then they rush out, and they rush on to the next difficult story. So what gets told is a series of difficult stories, which leaves the audience increasingly heavy.
A monster tornado is plowing through downtown Tuscaloosa, a city of 93,000 people.
It was a 3-day storm that occurred in around April 27th, 2011, and it was a 3-day outbreak with several rounds of tornadoes that hit 21 states from Texas to New York. There were 349 tornadoes and 324 people died. As journalists, we sometimes are in the position where we feel like we're capitalizing on the grief of others when we're covering trauma, and that really bothers me because I didn't want to just take the story and then not give something back.
When my city was flooded, the whole downtown was underwater, and it was pretty hard not to watch TV at that time because they were showing okay, this part's underwater, and there was a certain point where I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. I don't want to watch it anymore.
Well, I think narratives of tragedy, they leave you feeling sad and sometimes hopeless, and they leave you feeling a little bit powerless as a viewer.
Sensationalism is sort of that break in the wave. It's how do you just get to the top of the wave and watch it break, but you don't really care so much about how the wave formed and what happens to the wave after it crashes onto the sand.
The media has gotten right the fact that trauma is something that connects us immediately in an empathetic way. What a lot of media gets wrong is that we need to show that empathy actually enables people on some level to then find redemption, to find a way through the difficult things in life.
What if we tell the bad stuff, because people want to hear it, so say all the bad things that happen, don't spare what you need to say it, and then make the through line of the story about the signs of life that follow that.
When the genocide happened in Rwanda, it was a frightening experience. We're just getting into Kigali through barricade after barricade of people with machetes, with bodies stacked up, by these checkpoints that had been set up and being threatened with hand grenades as we came in, left me kind of torn up and immediately trying to figure out how am I going to get out of this terrible situation. And one of the things that happened during the weeks that I was traveling there was that I found again and again the Tutsi survivors I'd met told me of the Hutus who had protected them, who had hid them, who had helped them. And the story that I told, that first long documentary that I did of about 20 minutes or so on radio, was really about the fact that Rwanda wasn't torn apart by age-old hatred, that in fact the ability to look at a genocide that was occurring at that point and find the seeds for what could later become resolution, that sort of resilience, that sort of ability for people to be people again after something so painful and dramatic inspired me, and also inspired me to really understand and try to explore how something like a genocide could happen. Because when you see the seeds of hope in it, it gives you the power and to get through the pain to actually tell the story.
When bad things happen, it isn't for nothing. Usually something is gained from it, an insight, a lesson, an unexpected door opens sometimes when you're in the darkest part of your journey. And I think that restorative narrative tells that over and over in different ways.
The restorative narrative is about honoring the journey that one took, a journey through suffering, a journey through pain. It's about taking the time to look at all of the various environmental, social, political circumstances that cause a person to be in a situation to begin with. And it's about allowing time to take place in telling the full story of how a person has moved from despair and come into a place of power and come into a place of growth and transformation.
I think the outcome of restorative narrative is hope. I think it's strength, and I think it's a reason to keep telling stories.
You know, my role when I was a pastor, and I carry this into my writing now, is I think people need to hear things that are going to strengthen them, going to make them a force for good in the world.
The message that I want people to get from my book is not that, you know, the superstorm happened and it was sad and towns were devastated, and I want the message to be that beautiful things come from our brokenness, and that the things that tear our world apart also reveal what holds us together. And I think that's what restorative narratives do.
It takes a better news person or documentary filmmaker or whatever genre we're in. You have to be better at it to tell the deeper, resilient story.
I think as we train ourselves to seek the restorative narrative, we have to, by nature, just become great listeners. By becoming great listeners, we're empowering those people to tell their stories. So it's all changing at the same time.
Journalists often get confused that somehow it's the technique that pulls out the story. It's really just the desire and ability to listen. And I think to be able to listen well, you actually have to empty your heart so that you're not trying to go after a story. You're not trying to mentally check off, wow, is this dramatic enough to affect the audience, that you just have to be there with someone and see what comes.